Hey everybody, Doug McCarron. I'm sorry I was not been around much recently. Had a lot of personal issues. I guess that happens when you get older. I got my Make Ukraine Great Again shirt, which I always like. And then also trying to upload. I spent like a week trying to upload videos and YouTube wouldn't let me. And eventually I jumped from Firefox to Chrome and it went up. So I don't know, maybe that's the thing. Maybe there's something that going on there. Anyway, I'm back. I hope you liked my Visit the Falls Church videos. I've done a couple of comments about God. And I've had some people write back like, there is no God. Or Nietzsche saying, I don't believe in a God who needs to be worshipped. And people who believe in that are stupid. And then I have another person who wrote, by wisdom, John 3:3, which is truly, unless you were born again, you can't see into the kingdom of heaven. These sound like they're in opposition, but to me, they kind of have that Aristotelian, I assert something, present some evidence, and this proves things. And they also have a strong case of, well, I'm the one who knows what's right, and if you don't agree with me, well, you're a fool. Not quite sure about the by wisdom, because I don't know if the guy's saying, this is my wisdom, or I'm the one who's wise, and declaration of that, John 3:3, or if he's referring to wisdom in the Bible, the female that the fire that led the Israelites out of bondage and protected them from Pharaoh, and also cries aloud in the streets, how long, you innate ones, will you dismiss my reproof? But it is interesting to me that you can have this discussion that people seem to be in opposition, and yet they're actually saying the same thing. My view is right, your view is wrong. Here's a bunch of words I put together that apparently provide proof. Yeah, I see, Ukraine versus Russia. There's all sorts of biblical people pointing out that someone else is an idiot for their belief, or they don't understand the actual context. And there's definitely this thing in human beings about, I have my view and this is the truth, and then if it gets changed, well, oh my God, I was wrong before, and now this is the truth. But I'm of the opinion that kind of misses the whole point of being alive. That's a discussion about life. That isn't life. It's like if I understand, of course I read the Bible in English, so I don't have all of the nuances. But the name I am in the Bible, it's like the first person of the state of being. But the exact word is not being. I'm a being. But they're talking about to be, the be that is behind everything. The reason why I note this is, I've said this in a few of my videos, but most of my life I despised myself and thought I was horrible and thought everybody hated me and didn't have any use for me. And then one day I came home from high school and my mom had gassed herself in the garage, and I found her. And the thing is, that wasn't the totally shocking thing. While I was looking at her and she was dead, I was saying, Mom, wake up. There was the sound of this, it sounded like a very large, dry tree branch cracking. And suddenly I was like looking straight ahead and 10 feet up in the air at the same time looking down. And I've heard of disassociation, which I guess this could be, except this was like actually two separate views. I was in my body and out of it at the same time. And both views kind of looked up, and it was like all this, the walls and everything that was here was like this covering, and it was like this voice was talking to me, except I can't exactly say what the words were. Now, one also has to note that I was in a garage full of gas fumes, so I could have been being poisoned. But it really struck me, and I got that there's life and there's the discussion of life. And most people, including me, spend most of their life having opinions and thoughts and judgments about what's going on around it, but they don't actually get that flame of life. They're not actually here. And I have a couple of times actually experienced that. There's can't think of his name right off. Justin, anyway, he does a YouTube thing on esoterica. There's a car going off outside. Hope you don't hear it. Anyway, esoterica, and he's talking about Agrippa, who was a writer in the Middle Ages, discussing how there's this point where it's not so much that your God comes into you, it's that suddenly there's like this puncture in your reality, and your whole inner reality, all your words and descriptions and beliefs just kind of empty out, and suddenly this part just wakes up. And I've had that happen a couple of times. So that's why when I sit here and I listen to these people talking about, well, Bart Ehrman thinks this, and this guy thinks this, and he's wrong, and he's right, and, you don't know what this syllable over here means, or this word over here means. Or like they talk about the Bible is the spoken word of God, even though the Bible never says that. To me, it's like there's a bunch of people, it's like there's something going on, and people are trying to figure it out. Which, isn't unusual, A lot of Greek philosophy is about that. Atheists, they aren't saying there isn't something there. They just don't believe in a theistic being. There seems to be an awful lot of energy doing something for some reason here. The hundreds of millions of species fighting around, crawling around on our planet, and all of these thoughts flowing around that might be in our brain, except, how do you see thoughts in this brain? It's just a bunch of chemicals and meat and, all the stars and all the galaxies. It's like, what is it? I read somewhere it's like 2.7 light years to the next star. I may actually be more, which is, you're not getting there in your lifetime. And that's just the first planet. And you look up at all those really bright lights, and then you start getting, that's all the stars in our galaxy, and then you look at the James Webb photographs, and you see all these brilliant stars, and you realize those aren't stars. Those are galaxies with millions of stars. And yet, people seem to get really involved in having a discussion about who's right and who's wrong. I suppose, as a kid, I wanted to understand what was going on. Mostly I wanted to figure out the right thing to do so my dad would quit complaining at me. But it's not what's actually happening. I saw something, there's something that James Webb discovered, and they said, this changes everything. Well, it doesn't actually change anything. The stars, everything, all the stars, everything's exactly the same. Our perception changed. That's what humans do. We treat our perception as that's what's real. That's what counts. But it's not what's real. There's a path that I came across when I was younger. It's a Catholic mystical path called the Via Negativa. And I'm not saying this is the only way to go, but it means the path of negation. And it's God's not that, God's not that, God's not that, it's not that, it's not that. And there's also, it leads to, the difference between the earth and the world. The earth is this big clump of rock and water that we float around on. The world is our perception. But it's not just our perception. It's like all this energy and stuff that causes our imagination, that causes us to see the way we do. And you have to fall off the edge of the world. You have to fall off the edge of everything you believe. Atheism, mystical Catholicism, all scientists. You fall off the edge of the world and see who is. I don't know. There are some passages in the Bible where it makes God look like he's like sitting on this big throne and commanding, and I'm going to do this, and then there's other passages where he's kind of this amorphous, you can't touch him, can't touch anything. There's other passages where it's more of a she. And then you get into other religions, and there's just this, always, what is going on here? And yet our internal discussion is like, well, my discussion's the right one, so let's go to war, and you think yours right, and we'll hack each other up. And neither of them are it. So it is ironic to sit here and watch YouTube and all these contradictory viewpoints that really in the end are actually the same. My viewpoint's right. Here's a bunch of data that I agree with. This shows that I'm right. And I don't know that it actually does. It just shows that you strung together a bunch of words and prove to yourself you were right. And that isn't whatever is going on here. And I think it's actually better not to name it or describe it, because that's the way you get loose from your world, so you can step off the edge of it and look at it. That's what I have to say today. All right, thank you. Bye.